Hey guys, and welcome back to Beat 'em Up Joes. I'm Kelly Hampton, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Super Nintendo, one of my favorite consoles of all time. In this video, we're going to be walking through my collection, what I've gathered so far, what information I've gathered on the system and games for it, and just kind of give you a few tips on how you can acquire these games as cheap as possible and in the best condition. So without further ado, let's take a look.
Some people call it Super Nintendo. I call it awesome.
Hey guys, welcome back. One of the first things that I wanted to do in this video is kind of go over some things that I've learned that have helped me out in collecting video games, and especially with the Super Nintendo in general. So these are just going to be a few tips that will kind of help you on your way. If you have any questions about this stuff, definitely reach out to me. And I'm still learning too, but these are some things that have really helped me in my journey collecting these games. The first thing that I've got here is join some Facebook groups. This one here is the North American Super Nintendo Collectors Group on Facebook. These guys are great. I want to give a big shout out to these guys. This is where I've got a lot of my games. A lot of these guys are really nice, great to deal with. They have great prices because they're helping out collectors achieve their collections, just how they would like people helping them to achieve their collections. So there's a lot of cool people in here that I've dealt with, and a lot of people that I haven't dealt with, but I've just really enjoyed their knowledge on the subject. And so, and all of these guys in this group are very friendly. You never see anybody talking bad about each other. They're very respectful, and they all just love Super Nintendo. So definitely join some Facebook groups, especially North American Super Nintendo Collectors Group. Hook up with people in your hometown physically. And, you know, one of the things that I learned from Metal Jesus Rocks is that, and this is one of my biggest tips for you, is always let people know that you collect video games. Because, you know, you never know. You may know somebody that's just got some video games stashed away in an attic or something, and they're like, I don't know what to do with these. Does anybody even want these? You let them know that you're collecting video games. They will probably sell you those, or they may even give them to you. I had an experience like this just yesterday. My dad had found some NES games that were just in his shop, and he was like, hey, do you want these? So that does happen from time to time, and you know, just always let people know that you collect video games, and that will, you know, kind of broaden your search. You know, look around on your Facebook marketplaces, Craigslist, eBay, but definitely be careful on eBay and Craigslist and that sort of thing because of reproductions. A lot of time, reproductions are, you know, pawned off as the original thing, the legit, real McCoy. But if you're buying online, definitely always get board pics. And compare it to pictures of legitimate boards on Google or whatever, and you know, make sure that that's a legit copy of, say, Earthbound that you're paying $200+ for before you buy it. And if you're in person, definitely get you one of those GameBit drivers to open up your carts if you're buying expensive games. I haven't gotten there yet. I've decided to buy my cheap games first, and then I'll worry about the more expensive games. But that's definitely something to keep in mind. There are some label variants, cartridge revisions. There are Majescos, which are a later release, assembled in Mexico version of a game. In the boxes, they came with black and white manuals. So that's just a different version of the game. These are, they've got lower quality labels, and a lot of times the label on the back is just stamped into the cart, and that's how you can tell a Majesco. They'll say assembled in Mexico where it would say made in Japan. That's how you can tell a Majesco a lot of times. And those are legitimate cartridges. They're just much later re-released. Another tip I have for you is definitely get in your local shops and get to know these folks. That way, when you're going in there and you're looking for games, and there will be times that you'll see a game that is, it's going cheaper a lot of places than what it is in their shop. And sometimes you can haggle with these folks, but you definitely want to know these guys first. You don't want to just walk into somebody's shop and be like, oh, you've got this overpriced, man. I'm not going to pay that. No, I mean, just, respectfully let these guys know that, say, hey, I've seen this a lot of places, like $5 cheaper. Is there anything that you can work with me? So get to know the guys in your local shops, and they'll be more willing to work with. And then eBay is a whole other can of worms. I'll probably do an entire video by itself talking about how to look for games on eBay, but it's definitely one way to do it. There are a lot of games on eBay. As video game collecting has blown up, a lot of resellers have gone to eBay, and I've got a lot of really great prices with eBay. You just really have to know how to use it, really. And there are probably other videos out there about this, so search on YouTube to find, how do you find good deals on eBay when it comes to video game collecting. I think Metal Jesus Rocks actually did do a video about optimizing your eBay searches for video games. So just be aware of that. You need to know how to use eBay to use it most efficiently. But those are really all the tips that I have for new collectors right now. Hopefully some of this stuff will help you out and get you on track to start your Super Nintendo or NES collection, Game Boy, stuff like that. So first things first, let's talk about hardware. And the first thing to know about Super Nintendo hardware as far as consoles go is that there were two major revisions of the console hardware for the Super Nintendo. Now, there were a few chipset revisions in this launch edition here, most famously the one-chip SNES, but we're not going to get too much into it. It's really technical. I'm not a big technical guy. The main thing to know about the one-chip SNES is you can get a better video signal out of it. Whether you're using composite, component, or S-Video, you're going to be getting a better video signal out of the one-chip SNES. But there is this launch edition Super Nintendo, and then there is the SNES Junior, or Mini as it's sometimes called. Not to be confused with the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, which is also sometimes called the Mini. This was a hardware revision that came out near the end of the life cycle for the Super Nintendo, just as a way to get a cheaper Super Nintendo into homes, and also to kind of revitalize the Super Nintendo business for Nintendo. So it's just a cheaper, slimmed down, more sleek Super Nintendo. But there is one distinct advantage to the launch edition hardware, that being that while both consoles will do composite out, that being the RCA cables with the red, yellow, and white, but the launch edition Super Nintendo can also do component via the HD Retrovision HD component cables. These are expensive. They're kind of hard to get a hold of. They sell out and then they restock them. You have to be right there to get them. They're $100. So if you really want component, definitely stay on them and keep $100 in your pocket. But then you can also use S-Video, which is what I use. I have a early HD Sony Bravia rear projection television. It's equipped with S-Video, and I have just like a multi-console S-Video cable that I can use with my SNES and with my PlayStation consoles, my Xbox, and that works great for me. The step between composite to S-Video is out of this world. It looks fantastic. I will caution you though that a lot of these S-video cables are really just the composite video signal into an S-video port. So watch out for that. If it has the composite red, yellow, white on there with the S-video, it's probably not true S-video. So look for something that is just the S-video cable and maybe audio red and white. So just a little tidbit there, watch out for that. But the jump from composite to S-video is fantastic. I have heard that the jump between S-video and component is not as drastic. So like I said about the HD Retrovision cables, if you really want that, go for it. Hey, your TV may not be equipped with S-video. You may only be able to do component. So definitely jump on those in that case. But if your TV is equipped with S-video, S-video is great. Go for that. Because composite just doesn't look great on modern TVs. And that's just something to keep in mind. You won't realize it until you actually see it. It kind of blew my mind when I started collecting Super Nintendo and I plugged this guy up to my modern television and said, oh my goodness. But S-video on my early HD Sony Bravia rear projection television looks fantastic. S-video is probably the most cost-effective way to go, and it looks great. So that's all I really have to say about hardware. Launch edition, you can do component or S-video, whereas the Junior, you're only going to get the red, yellow, white composite out of. So just depending on what you've got, if you've got a CRT with the RCA inputs, the Junior might do you just fine. If you've got something with S-video, you might go for the launch edition just to take advantage of it. So moving on from system hardware, there is one last thing as far as consoles go, and I consider this the next console in the Super Nintendo line. This is the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, very similar to the Nintendo Entertainment System Classic Edition that came out, I guess it was last year or the year before. No, this guy came out last year. It would have been the year before that guy came out. But anyway, what this is it's a very small Super Nintendo. Looks just like my launch edition Super Nintendo, as you can see here. And it's got flash memory chip in it, and there are 21 games preloaded onto this guy. It's plug and play, HDMI, works on all your modern televisions, and you can actually hack this guy to put more games on it. I know, but you know, do it. You can play. The way I've got mine set up is I've got most of what I own on there and some stuff that I'm not really willing to pay the money for. Because some of these games are expensive, and we'll be going over that. But the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, these are awesome. Don't pay scalper prices on these guys. I still see these everywhere. In the North American Super Nintendo collectors group that I was just talking about, these guys are always posting about this guy. Hey, I saw this at my Target, at my Walmart, my GameStop. Just hold out. If you haven't found one yet, you will find one. I think they're restocking them. I know that they're doing the NES Classic Edition. They're restocking those. So most likely they're going to restock these eventually. Don't pay the scalper prices on this guy. You'll find one eventually. They're everywhere. But that's the SNES Classic Edition. Also, the main reason that I think that this should be in any Super Nintendo collector's collection is because this is the first official release of Star Fox 2. The way I treat this is my Star Fox 2, you know. This goes on my shelf with my games. This is Star Fox 2. So that's what I have to say about the SNES Classic Edition. There are also many like clone consoles. You know, you've got the Retron line. The Retron 5 most recently has HDMI and gets you quick into your modern televisions. Does NES, Famicom, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, Genesis, you know, probably Master System. It also does some Game Boy and Game Boy Advance stuff. So if you're looking for an all-in-one solution to your retro gaming stuff, definitely do the Retron 5.
There is some compatibility stuff there, so that's kind of an issue. But from what I hear, it's a cool system, hooks up to your modern television, and you've got a full service console that will play most retro gaming systems games. So, and the last bit of hardware that I want to talk about is the newly released Analog Super NT. This is an FPGA based chip system. It's a smaller system, but what this means, and again, I'm not a super technical guy, what this means is this is a chip that's programmed to act as much like a Super Nintendo as possible. And this guy has HDMI out as well. I've talked to a bunch of guys that had bought one at launch. They're a little pricey at $200, but from what I hear, it's worth it. You get into your modern televisions, it's pretty close to accurate, as close to accurate as possible. They can update the firmwares if something is a little screwy. It seems like a cool product. You can get the 8BitDo wireless controllers with it. Cool stuff. If you guys have one and you want to chime in, if I missed something about the Super NT, or you just want to talk the guy up, just get down in the comments for me and talk about that guy. But as far as console hardware, that's about all I've got, other than there are a few handhelds. I have right here the Hyperkin Superboy S. There are a few different models of the Superboy. There was the original Superboy that had some audio issues that I had heard about, so I decided to go with the upgraded S. They seem to have fixed the audio issues, but this one is in 16:9, so keep that in mind. The later issue, the Superboy SFC, I think enables you to do 4.3 as well. I believe that's what I've heard. I may even be able to do 4.3 on this guy. I'm not sure. I kind of prefer 16:9 for some reason. It's kind of a weird thing, but it really doesn't bother me. I'm so used to widescreen format by this point that I really kind of like it. But the cool thing about this, if I can get this, loading cartridges into these guys is a little bit weird. But the cool thing about this is it's a portable Super Nintendo that you can take cartridges with you everywhere you go. And what's also cool about it is it will play your PAL territory and your Japan territory cartridges just like you would your North American. So that's a really cool feature. I've got a Super Famicom Japan cartridge in here now, and it's just cool. And it looks like a Super Nintendo controller. The SFC looks like a Super Famicom controller. So I like the Superboy a lot. And there is also another handheld called the RDP, the Retro Duo Portable. It doesn't, the main thing about the Retro Duo Portable that I have a problem with is it doesn't look, like retro. It looks like a more modern piece of hardware, but it plays cartridges as well. A lot of people have a lot of good things to say about the Retro Duo Portable as well. So, and it actually comes with an adapter to play your NES cards. So if that is a bonus to you, definitely go with that guy. But the Superboy is a fantastic product as well. These are emulated just like the Retron 5. So, tread lightly. But from what I've seen, it works just great. Next, I have, this is the standard Super Nintendo controller. And this is what I normally use. There is one other version of the standard Super Nintendo controller that looks just like this, but instead of having Super Nintendo Entertainment System printed across the front of it, it's just branded into the controller, much like a N64 controller. You've just got the Nintendo logo branded into it. I think it's pretty attractive. I'd like to grab a couple. Then you've got the Super Famicom controllers that have the colored buttons. There are a few different controllers. And then there are third-party controllers. This is one I happen to have. This is the Interact SN Pro Pad. This is a really nice controller. I really actually enjoy it. I'm not a big third-party guy, especially when it comes to Nintendo, but this guy's cool. If you can find one, it's a cool controller. It's got turbo and slow motion and all that. I don't use a lot of that, but it's a good feeling controller. You won't be disappointed with it. And next, I have a multi-tap. This is the Super 5Play from Performance. They're another third-party company that was making stuff in the time of the Super Nintendo. But you know, if you want to play like 4-player Madden or NBA Jam or Bomberman, you've got to have a multi-tap. There are only 2 controller ports on the Super Nintendo, so pick one of these up. I got this with my Super Nintendo. They're not super expensive. There's one that Hudson made for Bomberman that may be a little bit more expensive. I haven't really priced it, but there are a few different versions of multi-taps out there. It's Super Nintendo hardware. I plan on collecting some of them. I just haven't gotten there yet. And the last piece of hardware that I want to talk about, this is kind of hardware, kind of a game. This is the Super Game Boy, and I'm super pumped to have this. I never owned one of these. I just picked this up a few weeks ago, and I've messed with it quite a bit lately, and this thing is cool. I put it in my Super Boy. I have, I know that's what a Game Boy's for, but I've got a larger screen to play my Game Boy games. I don't know. I like the Super Nintendo and I like the Super Game Boy. One thing to note about the Super Game Boy is that there is a controller that Hori made in Japan for the Super Game Boy that's got a Game Boy aesthetic to it. So definitely check that guy out if you like the Super Game Boy. That's a really cool controller. I'm looking to pick one up very soon if I can find one at a good price. But one last thing. I've talked about a few third-party devices that are compatible with the Super Nintendo. There are companies that are actually still making controllers and such for the Super Nintendo. I bought these guys just kind of have it because they're still making them. This was brand new, and I paid like $15 for a pair of them. So it's cool. It's definitely not like, Nintendo. It's third-party, but I thought this was a cool box, and they made their own Nintendo seal of quality. It's just cool. This is brand new Nintendo stuff, and it works with your Super Nintendo. These are actually pretty cool controllers. I have found that they don't work with certain games, this particular controller, so that's a little bit weird to me, but for the games that they do work with, they work just fine. They feel pretty similar to an original Super Nintendo controller. It's just cool to me. But like I say, that's all of my hardware. Let's look at some games. Alright, so now for the meat of this video. Let's talk about the games that I've gathered so far. And I'll give you some tips as I go along, some things that I've learned in collecting Super Nintendo, some things that might benefit you. But the first thing that I want to talk about is that there are 3 major territories that most games are sold in, and that being North America, Europe, and Japan, or Asia, but mostly Japan. So I've got, most of my collection is North American, of course. I live in North America, but I just picked up a couple Super Famicom games. These are Japanese. I've got Super Donkey Kong, which is one thing about Japanese games. Certain games are very playable even if you don't speak the language or read the language. Platformers like Super Donkey Kong, Mario, stuff like that you can get by really easily even if you don't read the language. And I also have Super Mario RPG. This game I'm not going to be able to play because there's a lot of text. It's an RPG, and there are also some parts in this game where you have to pick the correct line out of a phrase. So I'm not going to be able to play that yet. I'm trying to learn some Japanese, but it's a little slow going. But I mainly bought this just because it was in a shop and because it's cool. It's a Mario game and it's Super Famicom. But like I said, a lot of games you're not going to be too bothered if you don't read Japanese because you're not going to need the text. Mostly just RPGs. And then there are also a lot of games that have English text in them already, so they're mostly playable in the first place. So there's North American, the Japanese Super Famicom games, and then there is also PAL for the Europe territories that are the cartridges actually look very similar to a Super Famicom cartridge, and their console does as well. But in PAL territories, their televisions run differently. They run at 50 hertz rather than 60 hertz, at least in this time period. And they use SCART connectors, excuse me. But so if you want to play PAL territory games, you're going to have a PAL territory system. Or maybe the Retron 5 does that. I'm not positive on that. I haven't bought any of the clone consoles. But what's cool is the Superboy will do PAL. It has a little switch on the top and it will play PAL territory games. And this is to say that there were a few exclusives in all territories. So if you're really into Super Nintendo and you want to collect everything, there were a few exclusives in the PAL territory, in the Super Famicom, and in the North American territory. So just keep that in mind. If you just want to go North American, that's, you know, up to you. I'm definitely not going to tell you how to collect. But I would like to have a little bit of everything that I can get a hold of. So that was just some knowledge that I had gathered for myself. So next, we'll look at my boxed games. Now, boxes are a weird thing to me because it kind of weirded me out at first because I, like many people, when I had my Super Nintendo, I tore boxes up, I threw them away, and, you know, I regret that big time. But so boxes were a big thing for me when I started collecting. I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, these are all going to be crazy expensive. And some really are. But a lot of the ones that I have are not like crazy expensive. I think probably the most I spent on any of the boxes I had is probably about $30. I bought a sealed game, and we'll get to that one. But we'll just kind of go through my boxed games. These are really not too bad, and you can find them in good condition still, and I think it's really cool. But this is NBA Live 96. This is a series of basketball games that is more simulation based. It's not going to be your NBA Jam style basketball game, but you know, if you like the simulation type basketball, this is actually really fun. NBA Live 96, I think this is the only live game that I've played so far, but this one kind of toes the line between the simulation style of like NBA Showdown and Bulls vs. Blazers, which is part of this same series before it went to live. But it kind of toes the line between that simulation style and a more arcadey style. There's some like special moves in this one that was new for live. So, you know, if you want to be in that middle line, check out NBA Live. I like this one, but I like, you know, most basketball games on the system. Next is Bulls vs. Blazers. This is one of my favorite simulation basketball games on the Super Nintendo. When I got this, I was really pleased with the game. And the cool bonus about this particular game, and probably NBA Showdown as well, I'm not positive, but Michael Jordan's license was actually included in this one, whereas you did not get Michael Jordan's license in like NBA Jam or NBA Hang Time and that sort of thing. I don't know if his license was maybe too expensive, or he didn't want to have anything to do with maybe NBA Jam or whatever. I'm not positive on what that story is. If you guys know why Michael Jordan's license was not included in those games, please let me know down in the comments. But that's a cool thing because Michael Jordan was huge at that time. Just pop culture icon. There was also a Michael Jordan game on the Super Nintendo called Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City. I have not picked that guy up yet, but I've played it, and it's a pretty cool game. It's cute. It's very cool. It's well done, and it's a good, like, you know, if you were a fan of Michael Jordan, that was something that you would want to have. But that's Bulls versus Blazers. If you like simulation basketball, check that guy out. Michael Jordan's license in that is very cool. Moving on to the next game I have here, and I'm starting out with sports. Most of the stuff that I have is sports as far as boxed games go, and I've got a lot of sports games loose. Sports games are cheap, and there's a lot of them out there, and often you can find them in good condition. So next I have Team NFL Football, and the thing about this one that was really interesting to me, the reason why I picked this one up, was that this is developed by Konami, and I personally didn't know that Konami made a bunch of sports games, so that was cool to me. It's not a bad football game. It's not near as bad as I thought it would be, but it's not great either. It's not a Madden, and it's not a Tecmo Super Bowl or anything like that, but pretty cool. Cool history, Konami making a football game. Next, I have Super RBI Baseball. The reason I picked this guy up is I particularly like baseball games as far as sports games go, and RBI Baseball on the NES is one of my favorite baseball games. So I decided to try Super RBI Baseball. Super RBI Baseball, on the other hand, is not my cup of tea. It doesn't feel the same as RBI Baseball felt on the NES to me. So maybe if I give this one some more time, I'll enjoy it, but it doesn't feel the same, to me at least. So next I have my Madden games. This is one of my side collections that I have going on. John Madden football games are like still one of the biggest franchises in video games. It started in the 16-bit era and is still running today. And there are people that, like, if they don't buy any game, every year they buy John Madden football. So that was one of the side collections that I wanted to start when I started collecting video games. And I've got 3 of them complete in box, and I just completed my John Madden collection today, actually loose. So this is John Madden Football 93. This is what was the second one released on Super Nintendo. And I've got that one complete with the playbooks and all that. And the other bonus of these Madden games is they're cheap. There were so many of them made, and a lot of people bought them. So they're very cheap, often in good condition. This one's John Madden Football 94, and maybe just Madden NFL 94. But this one's in great condition. I'm really happy to have this. It's in fantastic condition, complete in box. Very happy with that guy. And then I have Madden NFL 96. Now this one's a little bit more beat up, but maybe I'll find an upgrade to it later on down the line. And I need to complete my boxed Madden collection as well. One more sports game, and then we'll get to the rest of my complete and box collection. This is ESPN Speed World. This was a Sony ImageSoft game. Sony actually developed, a few games on the Super Nintendo. One of my favorites on the Super Nintendo, Chuck Rock. I have that in here. We'll talk about that when I get to it. But this ESPN Speed World, the main reason I bought this is the box was in fantastic condition. So, and I think I paid like $7 for it. So, but that's probably the best box I have. It's very crisp corners, everything in there. So I was happy to have that. The game I'm not too thrilled with. It's just kind of, it's not great, but maybe if I give it some more time, like I said with RBI Baseball, maybe if I give it some more time, I'll really enjoy it. So next in my complete and box collection, this is Space Invaders, an absolute classic when it comes to arcade games. This guy was actually sealed when I bought it. Now, before you get all upset and want to chop my head off, this guy I paid $30 for. That's about what it goes for. And when you open it and make it complete in box, it only goes down to about $20. It's still worth $20 complete in box. So I paid $10 to open a brand new Super Nintendo game for the first time in like 20 years. I was okay with that. You know, some people aren't, you know, they want to hold on to their sealed games, but you know, I didn't really care. It was cool to open a new Super Nintendo game, and it smelled amazing. Try it sometime. But that's Space Invaders, like I said, one of the all-time classic arcade games. Pretty cool on Super Nintendo as well. Next, I have SimCity. Now, this version of SimCity is really cool. What's cool about SimCity on the Super Nintendo is it's loaded with like just Nintendo stuff. There is a Mario statue that you can get for your city, and Bowser plays the part of Godzilla wrecking your city. There's probably some other stuff, but those are the two things that I've seen so far. I need to play more of this, but really enjoy this. If you're a big Nintendo fan, big SimCity fan, definitely pick this guy up. It's really cool. It's well done. It's fun to play. Next, I have another one of my all-time favorite games. This is actually part of another side collection that I've got going on. This is WrestleMania, the arcade game. I've always really loved this game, even though the Super Nintendo version is not the best. It's just got a few problems with it. We'll talk about that just a little bit, but I've always liked WrestleMania, the arcade game, because it embodies the way I saw professional wrestling in this era. I don't really watch a lot of wrestling anymore. It's just kind of lost me. But in this era, as a young child, I saw these guys as these superheroes doing these superhuman, larger-than-life things. And that's what this game is. It's a Midway arcade game, you know, the same guys that did Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam. They did this game. So it's way over the top, digitized characters, you know, uppercut sending them flying up into the rafters. Undertaker summons ghosts, and Doink the Clown shocks them with the hand buzzer and stuff. It's just craziness. But that to me was what professional wrestling was as a young child. So for whatever reason, I latched on to this game. But it's also a very fun, you know, Midway arcade game. If you like Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam, this will probably scratch that same itch for you. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this anymore, so it's just kind of one of my guilty pleasures. And I've got the Genesis version of this as well. I want to get, like, you know, the 32X, PC, Sega Saturn, PlayStation versions of this. But like I say, this is not the best version, but this is the version that I grew up with. The problem with this version of the game is that there can only be 3 wrestlers in the ring at the same time, as opposed to the 4 that are in every other version. And it's missing 2 characters from the roster as well, being Bam Bam Bigelow and Yokozuna, which neither one are, you know, really my favorite wrestlers, even for this era. But Bam Bam Bigelow in particular is a lot of fun to play in this. He has a move where he jumps off the top rope onto the guy through the ring in flames, and it's just cool. It's just the same kind of zany stuff that all the other characters do. But very cool stuff. I really like this game. And lastly, as far as my complete in box collection goes, I have Tetris and Dr. Mario. Now, this is a very special game to me and my family because this is one of the only games that I can get my wife to play with me. We like to play Dr. Mario, and we have a lot of fun with it. It gets very competitive, but we have a lot of fun, and it's just, this is a great package. The Tetris in this is also very good. I like how the blocks change color as you go through the levels. The sound in Tetris in this version is not the greatest, but I just don't really like it. This is the Player's Choice version, and that's another thing about games on the Super Nintendo, and they've done this through all of their consoles. Nintendo did a budget line of some of the best-selling titles for the Super Nintendo called Player's Choice, and these are million-seller games, and I think these were like $20 when they came out, much like Player's Choice is today. When you go buy a Player's Choice version of a game, it's like $20. So that's a variant of this. There was the original version that came out. I still need to grab that one. So there are a handful of titles on the Super Nintendo that have Player's Choice variants as well. If you collect variants, that's something to keep an eye out for. And the price is normally pretty similar between Player's Choice and the original release. It just depends on what the game is, and how many were made, how many sold, and how many are available, so on and so forth, with much the rest of it. So next we'll move on to my loose games. I've got around 100 carts. I do have some doubles in here, so I don't quite have close to 100 unique games, but we'll run through these. First I have here is Batman Returns. Now, this game blew me away when I actually played it. I did not play this when I originally had my Super Nintendo, but I emulated it a few years later, just playing some Super Nintendo games, and I emulated it, and this is a cool beat 'em up. The coolest thing about it is like just the variety of moves that Batman has. You can take two dudes and bash their heads together. You can throw a dude up into the background, into a wall or a window, a storefront window in the background. It's just a lot of fun. It goes a long way to making a cool beat 'em up a little bit cooler. So Batman Returns is actually one of my favorite beat 'em ups. Definitely check that guy out if you have not played it. Very cool. Batman fans, beat 'em up fans, very cool game. Next I have Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures. I played a little bit of this. It's kind of a Pac-Man runs around and you have to shoot things in his path that might be a danger to him. I played a little bit of it. It seems really cute and fun. It starts out with Pac-Man and his wife, and his baby starts crying. So the gist of the game is you're going to get baby a bottle. So it's cute. I'll play some more of this, and this is also a rental game. I have a passion for rental games and Sharpie name games. I just like stuff like that. It's cool history. But some people do not like that stuff, and they always want to know how to get stickers and Sharpie and stuff off of games. And I will be doing a video about that in the future, just in case that's your thing. You want more clean, crisp cartridges. So be on the lookout for that video. Next I have Bassmasters Classic Pro Edition. Now, this is an upgrade to Bassmasters Classic, which is a cool fishing game. Fishing games on the Super Nintendo and just in the 16-bit era were really fun to me. I've spent a lot of time with this game. I think it's really fun. Next I have Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball. This is probably, I don't know, this and Extra Innings are two of my favorite baseball games on the Super Nintendo. Like I said, I like baseball video games, and this is one of the best. It's a lot of fun. This is Nintendo developed. They actually owned the Mariners in this time. They just sold the Mariners, Nintendo did. They made, pretty good money off of it as far as I could tell. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, maybe they did, I don't know. But in this era, Nintendo actually owned the Seattle Mariners. So they made a few games based on Ken Griffey Jr. and the Mariners franchise. Next, I have Chuck Rock. This is another Sony ImageSoft title. This is a lot of fun. I believe the developer was Core Design, and Sony ImageSoft actually produced this one, or published it rather. But this is a really cute caveman game. He goes around bopping dudes with his stomach. It's a lot of fun. There's a sequel called Son of Chuck that is supposed to be a little bit better. I have not played it, sadly. I need to find a copy. It's a little bit more expensive. This one was pretty cheap. I think I paid $6 for it. But that's a cool game. If you've not played Chuck Rock, definitely check it out. Very cutesy, Nintendo-ish, Super Nintendo game about a caveman. Next, I have Alien 3. This is another game on the Super Nintendo that I've always really enjoyed. I had this when I originally had my Super Nintendo, and it's just a lot of fun. It's kind of a Metroidvania-ish type game. It's kind of, Metroid-ish. But what you do is you go to these terminals and you select missions, and as you complete missions, you go through the game. And they range from, hey, save these prisoners in these cell blocks, get rid of these alien eggs, go weld these pipes. So there's a lot of variety in this. It's a shooter. You've got 3 different types of weapons. You're finding ammunition and health packs as you go through the base that has all kinds of different corridors. That's how it kind of feels like a Metroid game to me. But really fun. If you haven't played Alien 3 on the Super Nintendo, check it out. I've always really enjoyed it. Next, I have Turtles in Time, Ninja Turtles 4. Fantastic beat 'em up. This is a awesome game. I would say that if you have a Super Nintendo, this is one title that you definitely must have. This is based off of a arcade game of the same title, developed by Konami. They did a lot of Ninja Turtles license game in that time, and this is probably the best of them. I like them all, but Turtles in Time is fantastic. And there was also a remake that was released for the PlayStation 3 and I believe the Xbox 360. I'm not sure, but I've got it on my PS3. They changed a few things, took out a few bosses, and even a whole level. It's a little bit more modernized, and it's okay. But check it out if you guys are curious. But Turtles in Time is definitely one that you want for your Super Nintendo. But next, I have Revolution X featuring Aerosmith. This is a gallery shooter. You're moving a crosshair around the screen and shooting guys and finding hidden caches of CDs, which are your bombs. It's kind of cool. It's kind of gritty. Features Aerosmith and a lot of their music in samples. Excuse me, guys. But it's just a fun game. I'm not sure if this supports the mouse or not. That would be a great way to play it if it does support the mouse. I've never checked it. And I don't have a mouse currently. I need to pick one up and see if it... But if you know that Revolution X, if it supports the mouse or not, let me know down in the comments. It's just something that I wasn't aware of. I don't play a lot of that game, but it is a cool game. Next I have Out to Lunch. This is kind of an obscure, more uncommon title. It's not rare, really, by any means, and I got it pretty cheap, but this is a highly regarded platformer. I haven't played a lot of it yet, but it's come highly recommended, so when I saw it, I grabbed it. I need to get into that soon. Next is another one of my absolute favorite games on the Super Nintendo. This is Super Smash TV. This is based on another Midway arcade title called Smash TV, done by Eugene Jarvis, who did Robotron originally. And it's much like Robotron. It's a twin stick shooter. You use the D-pad to move around, and the face buttons determine the direction that you're shooting in. It's just a lot of fun. I like twin stick shooters a lot, and this is the measuring stick as far as twin stick shooters go, as far as I'm concerned. But I've never really found anything that's as fun as Super Smash TV. I play a lot of this. If you have not played Smash TV, definitely check it out. It's a very fun game. Next, another one of my absolute favorite games on the Super Nintendo, which a lot of these are. I like Super Nintendo games, so a lot of these games I'm going to be saying, oh, my absolute favorite game. But Final Fight is probably one of the first beat 'em up games I have ever played, and I just fell in love with it instantly. I like the aesthetic, the kind of grungy gang back streets, beat these guys up, and they're doing it with their fists and pile drivers and spin kicks and stuff. It's just cool to me. I especially I'm a Cody guy. I like Hagar. I think he's cool, but I'm a big Cody guy. I'm trying to teach myself the punch, punch, turn, punch, punch, turn, punch. It's a cool technique. I'll have a video up about it, but you may have seen it if you're a Final Fight fan. It's cool. It's a good way to credit the game. It's just a kind of little trick that was kind of exploited in the game. My daughter is actually named after Cody. We named her Dakota. I know I stole it from Robin Williams, but I love this game too, and I thought it was cool to name my daughter after my favorite character in one of my favorite games. Next, I have Yoshi's Island. This is a very highly regarded Super Nintendo game as well. If you own a Super Nintendo, you should have Yoshi's Island. I've never played a lot of this, so I'm really excited to have this in my collection now, to see why everybody's been so stoked about it all these years. So, really happy to have that. Next, one of my Madden games. This is Madden 97. Like I said, I finished my Madden loose collection today with Madden 98, so that should be coming soon. That's Madden 97. Next, I have an interesting title. This is Super Play Action Football. This is actually a Nintendo-developed American football game, which kind of blew my mind. But it's really cool. It's got some Nintendo stuff in it. When at the kickoff, when you flip the coin to see who wants to kick or receive, it's a Mario coin. It's got Mario's face on the heads and the Tanuki tail on the tails. So that was cool. It's kind of a weird football game because it's at an isometric view and you don't get to view as much of the field as you want to in a football game. So that's kind of weird. I need to play some more of it. But, Nintendo made an American football game. Kind of weirded me out when I found out about that. Next, I have Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball. This is a game that I've never really played. I just picked it up a few days ago. But it's kind of famous for being a bad game. But there are some bad games that I really like, so this might be good. If you've played Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball and you like it or you think it's terrible as well, let me know down in the comments. I haven't checked this out yet. I need to get to it. I just picked it up a few days ago. Next I have Zombies Ate My Neighbors. This is a great top-down shooter. It has multiple weapons that you'll find throughout levels. This has like 55 different levels in it. And what you're doing in this game is you're trying to rescue your neighbors from, zombies and all kinds of different monsters. There's one monster that spits out sprouts of fungus, and you're mowing down that monster with a lawnmower weapon. There's just a lot of goofy stuff that goes on in this. The first boss is a giant baby. It's a really fun, cute, cutesy horror game. It's a lot of fun. I love Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Next is another copy of Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball. Again, that's one of my doubles. I plan on giving those away at some point, contests on my channel, so definitely subscribe, like, comment, and share. And be in touch with me for those contests. I don't know when or how I'm going to do those, but I will be giving some of my doubles away. That's definitely something I plan on doing. This is another copy of Batman Returns. So, like I said, Batman Returns, awesome beat 'em up. Stay tuned for a giveaway for Batman Returns at some point in the future. Super Off-Road. This is an awesome top-down racing game, very much in the vein of like RC Pro-Am. This is really cool. It kind of blew me away. I don't know what much to say about this, but it's got some cool like rock and roll music in it. Just very fun. I've really enjoyed it so far. And speaking of Super Off-Road, there is also a Switch eShop game that recently came out, this year, called Rockin' Racing Off-Road, something to that effect. But it's very much this game. It was inspired by this game. That's a lot of fun as well. So check out Super Off-Road if you've not played it. Played that Switch game if you like those kind of arcadey top-down racing games. Next I have NBA Jam, the classic Midway arcade basketball game. Very cool. This one's got a Sharpie name. Kenneth Keith, if you're watching, I've got your NBA Jam. I'm loving it. It's in a good home. NBA Jam is cool. Next, I have a copy of Madden 95. It's got what I'm guessing are some Reynolds stickers on it. Like I said, I love Reynolds stickers. It gives a little bit of history to a title. So that's one of my Madden games. Here's another one, Madden 96. This one is very crisp, very nice label. Very clean cartridge. Next I have, another one of the great titles for the Super Nintendo. If you have a Super Nintendo, you should own Castlevania 4. This is like a pseudo sequel remake of the original Castlevania. But the cool thing about Castlevania, like the standout feature of this game, is that you can flip the whip in all 8 directions and you can hold it out and kind of flip it around. I can't tell you how long I've just stood there flinging that whip around just because I could. It's a lot of fun. But this is also a fantastic Castlevania game. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool graphics in it. Mode 7 was used really well in this. If you don't know what Mode 7 was, like I said, I'm not a technical guy, but it's this like 3D protocol that was used on the Super Nintendo that, does some cool depth stuff and scrolling from different depths. I'll probably, have some video up here somewhere showing some Mode 7 effects for you. Next, I have NFL Quarterback Club 96. These are cool football games. The main thing that I like about these games is that they have like a mini game, like quarterback training section in them. So that's a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing those little training drills. Next, I have Rival Turf. This is part of a trilogy of beat 'em ups on the Super Nintendo. This is a cool game, but they progressively got cooler in the trilogy, and they're progressively more expensive as well. But this is the first in that trilogy. There's this, Brawl Brothers, and the Peacekeepers. But they're cool beat 'em up games. A little obscure, a little uncommon, but if you're in Super Nintendo circles, these games. Rival Turf is just a little goofy, but the cover has always been famously, goofy. Again, we have a Sharpie name, Shane Robinson. If you're watching, I have your copy of Rival Turf, and it is in a good home. I love this guy. Next, I have a copy of Madden 96. I think we already had a copy of Madden 96, but here's another one. This one's a little beat up, but there's another copy of Madden 96 that will be given away at some point. Next, I have John Madden Football. This is the original. This one's in pretty good shape. I'm happy to have that one. Next is Star Ocean. Now, this is a reproduction because this is a translated game. This was released only in Japan originally, so I got a reproduction translated version of this game because it's a cool game. But this is my first tip for new collectors of cartridge-based systems like the Super Nintendo, NES, Genesis, and so forth. There are reproduction cartridges out there, and what that means is that this is not like the original game. This is a little bit of a different situation, but I want to talk about reproduction cartridges for a minute here. A reproduction cartridge is not like the original release of the game. This is something that someone cooked up in their bedroom or whatever, you know. And you want to watch out for that because you don't want to pay $200 for, say, an Earthbound reproduction when it's not the real deal. It doesn't command that price like a legitimate Earthbound would. So, like I say, just watch out for that. If you're buying online, ask for board pics for expensive games and compare that to pictures that you can Google, and make sure that that is a legitimate Earthbound that you're paying that $200 for, or, you know, Chrono Trigger, so on and so forth. Just something to keep in mind. Like I say, this is a little bit different deal. This is Star Ocean. This was originally released in Japan only for the Super Famicom. This reproduction is a translation. This was done by a guy named Marco Rossi in the Super Nintendo, North American Super Nintendo Collectors Group for me. He's got an Etsy shop called Squirrels Customs. Look him up if you're looking for some translated reproductions. He does cool work. What I really like about his stuff is that, you know, these shells are pretty close to what the original Super Nintendo games were, and this guy operates out of Texas. You guys might have noticed that I'm from Texas from the way I talk, and I'll get a good picture of this. I don't know if you can see it, but this cartridge says made in Texas where it would say made in Japan or assembled in Mexico. We'll talk about Majesticos here in a minute. But, you know, Texans are proud of the things that they do, and I'm really happy to have this in my collection because it says made in Texas, and this is a cool game. Definitely look up Marco Rossi on the North American Super Nintendo Collectors Group or on Etsy as Squirrels Customs. He does some really cool work. He comes highly recommended, and I'm very happy with the work that he did for me on this Star Ocean. This is very cool. But like I say, I don't have any problem with reproductions as long as they're, you know, sold and advertised as reproductions. Because, you know, I may buy a Earthbound reproduction for a cheaper price just to have an Earthbound cartridge before I buy one for $200 some odd. But something to keep an eye out for if you're buying expensive games. Definitely make sure that it is a legitimate copy. Next, I have Mohawk and Headphone Jack. This is one of my most uncommon games in my collection. Most of everything that I have is pretty common, but this is one of my more uncommon ones. It's not rare by any means, but it's a little more uncommon. This game is pretty cool, what I've played of it so far. I need to play more of it, but it's a real fast game. It kind of reminds me of Sonic, or it reminds me more of like Uniracers, the way it moves. It's kind of got this really fast whoop-de-doo kind of movement to it. I need to play more of this, but it's a cool game. A lot of people like it. Check it out if you can find it. Get it at a decent price. Next, I have Stunt Race FX. This is another Super FX chip game, like Yoshi's Island. What Super FX is they're special cartridges that have a extra chip in them that allow them to do more 3D stuff in these games. So this one is a little bit more uncommon and getting more so by the day. It's rising in price a little bit because this is probably one of the worst Super FX games. It's not really that cool a game. I mean, it's cool to have, but I don't dig it too much. But people gut these and use them for Star Fox 2 reproductions. So they're getting less common all the time, and the actual Stunt Race FX is getting more expensive. So if you can get this guy at a decent price, definitely grab it. Finish out your Super FX chip games. Next is the original NFL Quarterback Club. This is another rental title. You know, I have a soft spot for rental titles. And again, I like this series because of the NFL quarterback training drills in the game. You know, you're like throwing footballs through tires and, you know, running drill courses and stuff. That's a lot of fun in these NFL Quarterback Club games. Next is Jack Nicklaus Golf. This is a cool golf game. I really liked what I've played of it. You know, it's golf, but it's a lot of fun. Next is my Super RBA Baseball from my box when we were going through my box collection there. This is another rental title, so cool to have that. Next I have Sunday Night NFL Football. This is another Sony ImageSoft game. This is a Blockbuster Video rental title. I like my rental titles once again. This is my Team NFL Football Konami developed football game from my box collection there. I've got NHL Stanley Cup Hockey. I'm not a big hockey fan, so I'm not too big into this. I haven't played a lot of it yet. Maybe I'll dig it when I play some more of it, but you know, not a big hockey fan. Next is my Tetris Dr. Mario from my boxed collection. Next I have a pretty sought after title on Super Nintendo. This is not really a rare game, but I see people looking for this all the time, but it's everywhere. I see it here and there quite a bit. And you know, it's not super expensive either, but people really like Phantom 2040. And it's a cool game from what I've played of it so far. It's kind of got like a Mega Man or Metroid vibe to it, run and gun type stuff. It's fun. Next, I have the RPG that got me into RPGs. This is Final Fantasy III or 6. This is actually Final Fantasy 6, but it was numbered 3 here because we missed a couple titles like Final Fantasy II is numbered Final Fantasy II here, but it's actually Final Fantasy IV. So there are some numbering issues on the Final Fantasy titles here in North America, but this is Final Fantasy VI, titled Final Fantasy III here in North America. Fantastic turn-based RPG. This is the RPG game that got me into RPGs. Definitely check that out if you have not played it. Next is Extra Innings. This is another Sony ImageSoft title. This is another one of my favorite baseball games. Like I say, I like baseball games, and this one's really fun. It's got kind of a real cutesy look to it and very confident baseball mechanics. A lot of fun. And a special bonus to this particular cartridge that I have, this is another rental title. And as you can see there, it says, "Please be kind, rewind." They thought this was a tape. Or maybe they were being funny. I don't know. I think it's cute, and I'm glad to have that in my collection. Next, I have one of the Super Scope titles that I have. I do not have a Super Scope currently, but I'm looking to grab one soon. This is The Hunt for Red October. This is a light gun game for the Super Scope for the Super Nintendo. I have not played it because I don't have a Super Scope, but maybe it's pretty cool. You know, that was a big movie, so it's cool to have. And licensed games are not always terrible. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're pretty good. I've got some licensed titles that are some of my favorites. Next I have Out of This World. This was published by Interplay. This is a big 90s PC title. It's also often called Another World. I think that was the original title for it. This still sees releases on modern consoles all the time. I know they just celebrated a 20th anniversary for this game. It's a cool game. I've never finished it, but I've played quite a bit of it, and I enjoy it. I think it's cool. This and Flashback. I've got Flashback in here somewhere. We'll talk about that when I get to it. Next, I have Rise of the Robots. Now, this game was hyped up. I remember seeing in Game Pros and Nintendo Power and Electronic Gaming Monthly, magazines like that. There were ads for this game all over the place, and You would think because of that it was a cool game, but Rise of the Robots is not good. It's my opinion. I don't normally just not like games, but I pretty violently don't like Rise of the Robots. But I may be wrong. If you like Rise of the Robots, leave a comment down in the comment section and tell me why this is cool and what it is I'm missing. Next I have Tetris Attack. This is a very highly regarded puzzle game for the Super Nintendo. This is very Nintendo. It stars Yoshi and Bowser. So very Nintendo-ified Tetris puzzle game. It's not exactly Tetris. It's a little bit different type of game. It's been a little while since I've played it, but a lot of people like this, so I grabbed it. Next is my crispy Space Invaders that came out of that new Space Invaders that I bought. And it's a brand new game. It's pretty awesome. Next I have my colored cartridges. There were 3 games that came in colored cartridges on the Super Nintendo. This is Doom. This is a port from the classic id title Doom. This is a Super FX 2 game. I believe it's Super FX 2. I may be wrong on that, but it is a Super FX game. So like I was talking about with Stunt Race FX and Yoshi's Island, this will be part of your Super FX collection and also part of your colored carts collection. This nice red colored cart is very cool. And this port of Doom is not my favorite, but it's cool to have Doom on the Super Nintendo. It sounds cool. I like the Super Nintendo sound chip for it. Next I have Killer Instinct. This is the second of the colored carts. This one's a nice metal black, and this is a very metal fighting game. There's some metal music in it. It's very cool, like combo fighter. I know people have talked about like 500 hit combos and stuff like that, but the combo possibilities in this game are like almost literally endless, and the characters are cool, the sound is cool, the art is cool. It's a really cool fighter. Rare developed. If you know anything about Rare, they're a wonderful developer, especially in this era. I'm kind of worried about Rare these days, what's gonna become of them, but they were fantastic in this Super Nintendo N64 era. And the next and last colored title in the licensed Super Nintendo library is Spider-Man Venom Maximum Carnage. This is a cool superhero beat 'em up game. It stars Spider-Man and Venom. They're trying to take down Carnage, and you fight a lot of like thugs and stuff on your way to that fight at the end. And there's a lot of like cameos from villains from the Spider-Man universe. A lot of cool moves. There's a little bit of variety between Spider-Man and Venom, so that makes it a little bit cool. Venom being stronger and hitting harder, whereas Spider-Man's a little bit more agile and can move around a little bit. Green Jelly actually did the soundtrack for this. The sound chip on the Super Nintendo is a sampler. It's you feed samples into it and step sequence them. There's like a few effects that they could use and stuff. So that Green Jelly soundtrack on this game is very cool. I like the Super Nintendo sound chip. It's cool. I'm not super technical, but the way that chip is used in most cases is really awesome to me. But that's the last of the licensed colored carts. Another one that I know of is Super Noah's Ark, which is I would call it a Wolfenstein 3D clone. It's very similar to that, but that's not an official licensed cart, but that one is black as well. It's kind of got a weird shape to it. I'll put a picture up around here somewhere. Next is RoboCop vs. Terminator. This is a cool game. It's done by Virgin Games. I think they just published it. I'm not sure who actually developed the title, but it's a cool game. It's got some cool sounds to it. If you like RoboCop and Terminator, this is really awesome. And also what is really awesome about RoboCop versus Terminator, and I wish I had this box to show. I'll post some pictures up here. But it came in the only box of its kind in the entire Super Nintendo library. It's this plastic box that goes over a cardboard cartridge holder, but this plastic top of this box is embossed and it's got a design on it with the title, and it's the only box of its kind. It's very cool looking, very metal, very cool game. I need that box. I will be looking for one of those very soon. But next, I've got another Super Play Action Football. That one's a rental title, so it's got a lot of cool rental stickers all over it. It's another game that I'll be giving away at some point once I figure out how I'm going to give away some of these games. But any doubles I've got, I'm definitely going to give away to you guys for watching, because I appreciate you. Next is Eye of the Beholder by Capcom. As you guys can probably tell, I'm a huge Capcom fan. Just about anything that Capcom touched in the 90s was just gold to me. So any game that came out and I saw that Capcom logo on it, and Konami for that matter back then too, was pretty great, I jumped at. This is a first-person Dungeons and Dragons RPG game. I haven't played a whole lot of this. I actually got stuck not figuring out how to attack, but it seems really cool so far. I may be an idiot not knowing how to play this, but I need to watch a walkthrough or read a FAQ or something to learn how to play it, but it seems really cool so far. I need to play more of it. Next, I have my Madden 94 from my box. It's very nice shape, as was the box. Next, I have Madden 95. This is a rental title, so that one's really cool. I've got a lot of Maddens. Like I said, I just finished that Madden collection today, so I'm really pumped about that. Next, I have Ninja Turtles: The Tournament Fighters. This is another Konami Ninja Turtles game, but this one's a one-on-one 2D fighter, and it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of cool Turtles characters, little obscure enemies in it, but it's a cool fighting game. It's really hard. I didn't realize how hard it was until I played it now. I played a lot of it back in the day, but never realized how hard this is. This is one that you want to play with your friends rather than play against the computer. Next, I have Super Mario World. This is another tin pole in the Super Nintendo library. This was a pack-in for most consoles that came out, and a fantastic Mario game. This is probably my favorite 2D Mario game. It blew me away when I saw it, and still does to this day. I streamed a little bit of this on Saturday night. I had a lot of fun playing it, but it's a really cool Mario game. A lot of secret exits, a lot of secret levels, really cool stuff. I actually just recently got this. I was like 80 titles into the Super Nintendo library and still didn't have Super Mario World, so very happy to finally have that one. Next, I have Frank Thomas Big Hurt Baseball. This is a really good looking baseball game. I haven't gotten super into it to see if I really like it, but in playing what little bit of it that I have, it looks really good, and it's got a fun home run derby in it. I did play quite a bit of that, and that was a lot of fun. Next, I have Super Batter Up. This is done by Namco. Big arcade developer. They did, Pac-Man and Dig Dug and some others that I can't. Galaga. Galaga is another one of my favorite arcade games, but I haven't played this yet. I don't think I've even started this one yet, so I'll probably like it. It's a baseball game. I like baseball games, but I have not tried it yet. Next, I have World League Soccer. Now, soccer games on the Super Nintendo in this era are pretty hard to come by. Most soccer games are, I wouldn't call them rare, but they're uncommon, because in North America, we're just not as into soccer as the rest of the world is. So as a byproduct of that, there's not a lot of soccer games out there. There's another one, International Superstar Soccer, that's very hard to find, but I do not have that one yet. But World League Soccer was a little bit hard to find. This is the cheaper of the soccer games, so I picked that guy up when I did see it. Next, I have another great Capcom title. This is Disney's Goof Troop, and this will be a good time to talk about Majescos, and I'll get a better picture of this if you can't see it, but this says assembled in Mexico on it, whereas most titles say made in Japan. And this is something that I knew nothing about until I started collecting Super Nintendo this year. So what this is it's a later reprint of this game that was assembled in Mexico. I believe the boards are have the same blueprint and they're assembled the same way. So they're the same game, they're just done in a different plant and done in a different way. You might notice, and you'll probably notice clearer on some of the other Majescos I've got, is most of these don't have the clear finish over the labels like most Japan-made Super Nintendo games have, and a lot of them just have that precautions label stamped into the cartridge rather than having a label back there. So crappy labels, just later reprints of the game. I know that the manuals are black and white as well, so that's another variant of a lot of the more popular titles were released by Majesco assembled in Mexico. So that's another thing to keep an eye out for when you're collecting Super Nintendo. It may be something that you want to avoid altogether because they're poor quality, but they're legit games, and it's another variant of the titles as well. So I plan on picking up as many Majescos as I can, as well as picking up, the Japan-made versions of each title. We'll see how that goes. I've got quite a few Majescos, and then I've gone and picked back up some non-Majescos as well. Next, I have another Majesco. This is one of my absolute favorite titles on the Super Nintendo. I know I've said that before, but Mega Man X is... I often say that this is my favorite Super Nintendo game. I have a lot of fun with this game. The upgrade system is fun, seeking out all the upgrade parts and stuff. I know where it's all at now, but it's fun to run through the game and see how quickly I can do it and how efficiently I can do it. But like I said, this is another example of a Majesco. You can see how my label is faded and it kind of looks like crap, but that back label on the last Majesco for Goof Troop was just stamped in, whereas this one has a different colored back label on it. So there are a few different ways that they did these, and they're really cool. So that's my Majesco Mega Man X. I don't have a Japan Mega Man X, but I plan on finding one of those as soon as I can. Next, I have NBA Showdown. This is part of the Bulls vs. Blazers and NBA Live series of simulation basketball games. I believe this was like the middle game between Bulls vs. Blazers and NBA Live. I'm not positive on the timeline on that, but this is a very simulation basketball game. It leans closer to the Bulls vs. Blazers than it does NBA Live. A lot of fun. If you like simulation sports, check out NBA Showdown as well. Next, I have Super Bases Loaded. This is a cool baseball game. This was done by Jalico. They do a lot of beat 'em ups. They did that Rival Turf and things like that. But this is pretty cool baseball game. This one has a Sharpie name, MN. So if that is your copy of Super Bases Loaded, it's now in my collection. I'm loving it. It is in a good home. Thank you, sir or ma'am. And this actually came from JJ Games. They've got a big website that sells a lot of retro games. I didn't buy it from them, but I bought it from someone who had, apparently. So check out JJ Games. That's another way to build your collection. They're a little bit pricier than others because, you know, they've got to run their website and stuff like that. But it's very much like a brick and mortar store that you might find in your hometown. So that's definitely a way to build your collection, is through JJ Games. Or DK Oldies is another website that sells a lot of retro games, and I've bought a lot of like cardboard or inserts for boxes and stuff from DK Oldies as well. They carry a quite wide array of like manuals and boxes and box inserts and that sort of thing. So if you're looking for stuff like that, you just need that cardboard tray to finish out one of your complete in box titles, check out DK Oldies or JJ Games. They might have what you're looking for. So next I have that SimCity that came out of my box in my boxed collection. Next is Donkey Kong Country. This is another Rare title, Rare developed Donkey Kong game. These are platformers. If you don't know about Donkey Kong Country, definitely pause this video, go play Donkey Kong Country, and come back. But what's cool about this series of Donkey Kong games is, like I said, they're platformers, 2D platformers, but they did some like technical magic and made 3D models for all the characters in this game and put them into a 2D game. And you know, the result is a really cool thing. You know, I'm not a technical guy. We've talked about this several times, but the 3D polygonal characters that were used to make the sprites, it's just a cool effect. I'll probably do a video in the future with a little bit more information on how they did that in Donkey Kong Country, but if you've seen it, you know how cool of an effect it makes. Next I have X Zone. This is another Super Scope game, and two reasons I really bought this game is, and of course just for my collection, because I'm trying to build up the entire North American Super Nintendo library. But first is that this has the Kimco name on it. Now you'll know Kimco from Shadowgate on the NES and Deja Vu. Very cool puzzle games, and when I saw that name on this cartridge, I said, yeah, I think I want to pick that up. I don't know how similar this is to those games, but that name, anytime I see it, I want to pick those games up, because Shadowgate and Deja Vu to another extent is one of my favorite NES games. It's just really cool to me. But I have not played this, as I don't have a Super Scope yet, but I'll have to grab one and check that guy out. Next is my copy of WrestleMania, the arcade game, from my box. I bought this one from a local shop. As I said before, this is a cheap game. If you've not played it, at least give it a shot. I think it's a really cool game, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about this anymore, but I think it's really cool. Next, I have NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Now, this is my favorite version of NBA Jam on the Super Nintendo, just for the fact that it added more than 2 players on each team, and it added the hot spots, which are little spots that randomly show up on the court with different numbers on them. Say this one's an 8. You go stand on that guy and shoot from it, and you get 8 points from that shot rather than 3 or 2. So that adds another layer to the arcade craziness of this game, as well as power-ups that you can turn on in the Tournament Edition, where there will be little power-up pellets scattered throughout the court that you can pick up that like give you unlimited turbos for a limited time, or give you better dunks, or knock all players on the court down so you've got an open shot at the goal. Adds a lot of fun to an already crazy arcade experience. I definitely recommend NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Next is Donkey Kong Country 2. This is the sequel to Donkey Kong Country. Very cool as well. It's just more Donkey Kong Country with a new character, and it's a lot of fun. All three of these games in the Donkey Kong Country series on the Super Nintendo are must-haves for the Super Nintendo, in my opinion. Very cool games. I don't have 3 yet. I need to grab one as soon as I can. Next, I have NBA Hang Time. This is another Midway arcade basketball game. It's almost like a pseudo-sequel to NBA Jam. I don't really care for the look of it myself. They were trying to update the look a bit, but I think it looks worse than NBA Jam did. But this has a lot of cool stuff added to that formula. A lot of new dunks and a lot of better animations and things like that. Very cool. Definitely check out NBA Hang Time if you like NBA Jam. It's more of the same, but it's got some more added to it. Next is another Capcom title. I love my Capcom games, and this is kind of a beat 'em up. It's a single plane 2D side-scrolling beat 'em up with some Street Fighter-esque special moves that each mutant character has. You can play as Wolverine, Cyclops, Beast, Gambit, and Psylocke in this one, and they've all got their own unique levels and special moves. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, their special moves are very Street Fighter-esque, and this is just a cool beat 'em up. Another one of my definite recommended beat 'em up games for the Super Nintendo, or just, platformers and superhero games. I recommend it for any of those reasons, especially if you like X-Men and that animated series era X-Men stuff. Next, I have another, super favorite of mine, Street Fighter 2. This is the Street Fighter that caused the Street Fighter craze. And I will argue that the Super Nintendo version is certainly a big factor to why it blew up like it did, because this is probably the first fighting game I ever played. It blew my mind, and I still really like Street Fighter 2 and all of its different incarnations. And Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is still played in tournaments today. So Street Fighter 2 is just instrumental in the 2D fighting game scene. Should definitely be in your Super Nintendo collection, along with Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Super Street Fighter 2, which I've got both of those in here. We'll get to them. Next is another fighting game. This one's kind of a generic fighting game. This is called Fighter's History. This was done by Data East. I can't think of games right off the top of my head that Data East did. I think they did Burger Time in arcades. That's kind of a cool arcade game, kind of well regarded. But this is kind of a generic fighting game. There's some cool stuff in it, but it's nothing super crazy right home about. I've had fun with it though. I have enjoyed it. I do like my fighting games. Next, I have Sunsoft developed, Acclaim published, Porky Pig's Haunted Holiday. What I've played of this, I've really enjoyed. It's been really fun, and it's just really cute. The music's well done. There's some cute characters in here. I can't wait to play more of this and hopefully finish it soon, see what all it has to offer. Next, I have another Acclaim published title. This is Krusty's Super Fun House. I've not actually tried this out yet, but most of the Simpsons games on Nintendo consoles I've really enjoyed, like Bart's Nightmare, Bart vs. Space Mutants was really cool on the NES. There was a Game Boy game that I had. It was The Simpsons Escape Camp Deadly, I believe it was called, but that was really fun. So I like Simpsons games, so I thought I'd try this out, but I have not yet. I'll have to look into it. Next, I have Super Caesar's Palace. It's a casino game. It's not fantastic, but it's another Super Nintendo game. Next, I have Populous. This is another 90s PC game port. I don't know much about Populous. I was never a big PC gamer. Blizzard games I really like, and I was really into Doom. and Quake, things like that. But Populous, I don't really know anything about. I tried it out for just a little while a couple weeks ago, and I don't really get it yet. I'll have to look at some facts and some videos about it to see what it's all about. But maybe it's cool. I don't know. It's Acclaim published, so I don't know. Maybe a cool game. May not be. Let me know down in the comments if you like Populous, and let me know why I should check it out. Next, I have Bulls versus Blazers. Again, like I said, this is another one of my favorite games that I haven't played until now. And something cool about this particular game, this is another thing to look out for when collecting Super Nintendo titles. And I'll give you a closer view at this with some photos that I'll put into the video. But a lot of these that say SNS, this one is coded BU USA, and then they'll have a number at the end of it. And those are different revisions of games. I don't know if maybe they're just another release or if there were changes to the game, you know, small revisions. But there are some games that do have different variants. So I've got a few of those. I've got a number 2 of this Bulls versus Blazers, and I think there's a couple more that I've got. But that's another thing to look at when you're collecting Super Nintendo. It may not be something that you're really looking for, but it was something that I noticed in picking some games up, and I'll be looking for more of those. Next, I have WWF Super WrestleMania. I don't have the love for this one that I do WrestleMania, the arcade game. It's kind of a slower, more wrestling type game, which is not what I'm really into. But it's cool to have. Next, I have Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Now, this is not your typical Final Fantasy title. This is more of a spin-off in the Final Fantasy series. But this is, you know, designed to get people into Final Fantasy and RPGs in general. It's quite a bit easier. There's not as much challenge. That is not to say that there aren't some challenging parts in this. But, you know, like I say, it's designed to get people into RPGs, kind of slowly push you into it. But this was really fun. I really actually enjoyed it. Some others may not. It may not be for everybody. But it's just an easy, breezy RPG to play through. And it's got some really cool stuff in it that I wish would translate into more RPGs. Like when you're attacking enemies, they start showing visible damage, and there's about 2 or 3 stages per enemy. Some of the, you know, smaller enemies have one stage that they go through, but they've got their sprite changes as they take some damage. That's one feature that I'd like to see in more RPGs. I think it's really cool. The using weapons to solve environmental puzzles is really fun. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, if you have not played it, definitely check this guy out. It's a pretty cool game. It's not your typical Final Fantasy though. Next, I have another copy of Turtles in Time. And now, this is another great example of Majesco's and how much poorer quality labels are. This just upsets me. It's mangled, but it's another copy of Turtles in Time. It's just a variant that's in my collection. Like I said, you can completely ignore these. You can collect all of them. They're about the same price as what a normal Turtles in Time would be, or any other game that's in a Majesco, but, you know, just something to keep in mind. Next, I have Flashback, The Quest for Identity. Again, this is another 90s PC title, very similar to Out of This World or Another World. It's a futuristic, side-scrolling. You've got some shooting and stuff. It's really kind of a cool game. I have not finished it. I need to finish this someday. It's very highly regarded in a lot of circles. Flashback is supposed to be a cool game.
Next, I have Wolverine Adamantium Rage. This is kind of a single pane side-scrolling beat 'em up starring Wolverine, and I really like Wolverine. I'm not a big superhero fan, but I do like the X-Men, especially like that 90s animated series X-Men stuff, especially Wolverine. Wolverine's always probably been my favorite character, but this game I don't really dig so much. I don't know, there's just something goofy about it. But maybe if I play some more of it, I'll get more into it. I just haven't got there yet. Next I have Animaniacs. This is a Konami developed game based on the show. It's a side-scrolling platformer. It's really challenging. I have really enjoyed the challenge in this game. It seems pretty fair from what I can tell. But there's some challenging levels in this, and it's really kind of fun. There's a lot of variety in the different levels. So definitely check this out if you've not played it. It has KMD Sharpied on the back. So if this is your copy of Animaniacs, thank you. It's now in my collection, and it's in a great home. I appreciate you giving this up for me. I'm very happy to have that. But that's another Majesco. I need to find a Japanese copy of that as well. Next I have Super Tennis. Now this is a Nintendo developed tennis game, and from what I've played of it, it seems, you know, pretty fine. I've heard a lot of people say that this is a pretty good tennis game. A lot of guys in the North American Super Nintendo Collectors group, when I posted this as a pickup, they, you know, said this was pretty good. I have not played a lot of it yet, but I'm excited to see what's so cool about it. Next, I have Toy Story. This is actually a really cool game, and most Disney games in the 16-bit era were really fun, especially Aladdin. There's a Capcom-developed Aladdin on the Super Nintendo and on the Genesis. And they're actually two different games, but both of them are really good. Definitely check out Aladdin on the Super Nintendo as well. But Toy Story is a lot of fun too. Next is Super Street Fighter 2. This is the third Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo. This is the last one that was released for the Super Nintendo. We didn't get Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Maybe it was later than the Super Nintendo was around. Maybe the Super Nintendo could not run Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I don't know. For various reasons, we did not get that iteration. But this Street Fighter 2 adds 4 new characters: DJ, Fei Long, T-Hawk, and Cammy. 4 of the series favorites nowadays, especially Cammy. A lot of people like DJ and T-Hawk. You know, some people like Fei Long. I'm not a fan of any of those 4 new characters, really. I've played a little bit of Cammy, and it's just not my thing, but this has a really cool introduction animation. Definitely check that out. It blew me away when this came out. I love that introduction animation. Next, I have Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. This is another game that if you're collecting for Super Nintendo, this should be in your collection. And, you know, if you like Zelda, if you like video games, you need to play A Link to the Past if you have not already. This is a fantastic game. Probably still one of my favorite Zelda games. This is the game that really got me into Zelda, and just after I played this, I was like, oh man, I need more Zelda games. So, really cool game. I still play this quite a bit. Fantastic. If you have a Super Nintendo collection, this needs to be there. Next, I have my loose copy of NBA Live 96. This is the copy that went in that box that I showed in my box collection. This is a rental game, so that's very cool. Next, I have Jurassic Park by Ocean. Now, Ocean is a developer that I've heard quite a bit about in recent years, as they did a lot of work on the Commodore Amiga and some other, you know, maybe the Spectrum in European territories. And I listened to a couple podcasts from, you know, some of these European folks from over the pond, and a lot of European folks really like the developer Ocean from their games on the Commodore 64, the Amiga, and the Spectrum. They're supposed to be a really good developer. Some of the games that we got over here were really good too, but I've never held Ocean in the regard that some of these guys from over in Europe do. So if you see Ocean titles, pick them up. For the most part, they are pretty cool. Jurassic Park is a pretty neat game. It's a little difficult for me. I've never gotten too far in this game, but I have fun with it. Next, I have Street Fighter II Turbo. Now, this is probably my favorite Street Fighter II on the Super Nintendo. What this is a speed upgrade to the original Street Fighter II, and also adds the ability to play as the 4 boss characters. You can select the same character as your opponent for the first time here. It's got a lot of really cool upgrades to the original Street Fighter II, and that speed increase is fantastic. This is an awesome game. If you're going to get any Street Fighter II and you're just going to get one on the Super Nintendo, definitely get Street Fighter II Turbo. Next, I have Pit Fighter. Now, this is a THQ game. This is not a great game. It's a 2D fighter trying to cash in on the Mortal Kombat craze. These are digitized characters. I don't like this game at all. It's bad. But, you know, there may be some people out there that do like Pit Fighter. If you like Pit Fighter, definitely let me know down in the comments. Tell me why this is a great game, what I'm missing. I don't like Pit Fighter, but I may be missing something, like I said. This is my ESPN Speed World from my box. This is in very good shape. I'm very happy about that. And most of what I have is in pretty good shape. I'm happy to have these games. Next, I have Beware the Ultimate Evil of Warlock. This is an LJN title, which, if you know anything about LJN in this era, most of their games were regarded as crap, and, you know, a lot of people, like the angry video game nerd, will say stay away from LJN, but this is a pretty cool looking game. What I've played of it's kind of fun. I just haven't gotten into it yet. Let me know if you like Warlock down in the comments. Tell me why this is a cool game, but from my first impressions, I think this is pretty cool. I just haven't played a lot of it yet. Next, I have Bulls vs. Blazers. And like I said, this is one of my variant carts, one of the revisions. And I was wrong. This one does not say 2 on it. It just has no number, whereas the other one was SNSBU USA-1. This one is just SNSBU-USA. So that's another variant. These are just revision carts. I'm not sure what has changed from revision to revision just yet. I'll have to do some research on that. And I'll be doing a video on that in the future as well. Next, I have, this is also cool. This is John Madden Football 93. And I've got another one here, but they're different. The labels are different. So, and I believe, yes, this other one has a 2 in the product code. But on this one, I'll show some better pictures of this. But on the spine here, this John Madden 93 just says John Madden Football. On my next one here, excuse me guys, it says John Madden Football 93. And like I said, excuse me, this says SNSMF-USA-2. So that's another one of those revision carts that actually has some physical difference in the label itself. So that's really cool. I'm looking to find more of these, and like I say, do some more research on these and see what has actually changed from revision to revision. Look for a video about that in the near future. But that's all the Super Nintendo games that I've collected so far. Like I said, I started at the beginning of this year. I have around 100 cartridges so far. I don't have 100 unique titles. I've got a few duplicates strewn through here. And like I said, be on the lookout for some contests giving away some of my doubles. I appreciate you guys being here and watching me, so I'd like to give back a little bit. And one of the first things that I've thought about is I have some duplicate cartridges. I will give away some of these cartridges to you guys, kind of bolster your Super Nintendo collection. So stay tuned for that. Definitely like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. I always need more followers. I need more people to know about me. So do what you can to help me out and get me over the top there. But once again, thanks for watching my video about my Super Nintendo collection. I've had a lot of fun collecting so far, and I can't wait to see what I pick up next. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.